A car stalled in the middle of a rainy night. A choice that seemed impossible. That man, a single father struggling against accusations he had no strength to fight, was driving home after a double shift, body drained, eyes burning with exhaustion. Every dollar he earned was to keep his daughter from being placed in foster care. The road ahead blurred behind the curtain of rain, mirroring the chaos that was swallowing his life a little more each day. And then, in the darkness, he saw her. A stranger standing by the roadside, rain pouring down as if tearing the sky apart. Her luxury car blinked weakly with its hazard lights. She was cold, desperate, utterly alone in the vast emptiness. He could have driven past. He should have driven past. He had every reason to turn away, to pretend he didn't see. But he stopped. And he could never have known that this small act of kindness would become the most dangerous, yet the most miraculous, decision of his life. Before we continue, where in the world are you watching this story from? Leave a comment, and remember to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. Who knows, maybe the story you tell will be the next video we share. And now, what truly awaited him on that stormy night? Do you think he should have stopped or kept driving? The windshield wipers swayed back and forth in an endless rhythm, and Jason Miller's eyes burned after finishing a double shift. Loading cargo, scanning barcodes, moving non-stop. Because if he stopped, if he let himself think too long about the court date circled in red ink on the calendar stuck to his kitchen wall, he knew he would fall apart. 3 more weeks. He had only 3 weeks left before everything ended. Sleepless nights had become far too familiar. Jason couldn't even remember the last time he had a full night's rest. Every single night, he lay staring at the ceiling, calculating in silence. If he lost the case, he could face up to 5 years in prison. 5 years. More than enough to lose all of Susan's childhood. She would be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the most important years of her life. He would not be there. Who would remind her to brush her teeth before bedtime? Who would check her homework? Who would sit beside her bed and tell stories until she drifted off to sleep? Who would explain to an 8-year-old child why the only parent she had suddenly disappeared? Jason tightened his grip on the steering wheel, trying to push away the thoughts weighing heavily on his mind. 6 months ago, his life wasn't perfect, but at least it still had meaning. He had worked at Green Vista Landscaping for 4 years. The job was hard, but he liked it. Liked the fresh air. Liked the feeling of seeing results created by his own 2 hands. Rick Caldwell, the owner, had treated his employees fairly well. At least, that was what Jason used to believe. Until $47,000 vanished from the company account. $47,000. That number haunted Jason every minute of every day. $47,000, more than his entire income over 2 exhausting years. And Rick Caldwell had looked him straight in the eyes, cold and unwavering, and accused him of taking the money. The worst part? Rick knew exactly how to manipulate people. Falsified financial records, forged signatures, a chain of fabricated emails. All of it pointed to Jason. And Rick had better lawyers, better connections, better everything. The evidence looks really bad, Michael Bennett, the public defender assigned to his case, had said the week before, his kind eyes full of sympathy that, in Jason's situation, felt more like pity. I believe you're innocent, Jason. But proving it will be very hard. If convicted, he would face the maximum sentence. 5 years. 5 years away from Susan. 5 years for her to face the foster care system because her mother had left when she was only 2, leaving behind nothing but a messy scribble on a piece of paper. I wasn't born for this life. Jason had never blamed Laura. Not entirely. He understood that being a mother wasn't easy, especially when she was so young, so lost, unsure of what to do. But abandoning a 2-year-old child and a man who had never learned how to raise a kid? That he could never understand. For 6 years, Jason had raised Susan alone. Every day was a new challenge. How to tie a little girl's hair, how to explain things she needed to know as she grew up, how to teach her to become a strong girl, when he himself was still struggling with his own helplessness. But he tried. God, he tried with everything he had. And now, everything could be taken away by a man desperate to hide his own crime. Jason's car slowed down. Weak hazard lights blinked through the heavy curtain of rain. A luxurious red sedan stood on the shoulder of Charles River Parkway, the kind of car worth more than everything he had earned in 5 years of work. A woman stood beside it, her silhouette blurred in the downpour, hands frantically tapping at her phone. Jason's foot eased off the gas pedal on its own. "Just keep driving," a tired voice echoed in his head. "You're exhausted. She definitely has emergency services. Someone who drives a car like that surely has insurance, has money, has people who can help." But something in her posture, the way her shoulders trembled, he couldn't tell if from the cold or from despair, made his chest tighten. His mother's voice suddenly rang in his mind, so clear it made him swallow hard. As if she were sitting right beside him in the passenger seat. "The real you isn't who you are when everything is going well, Jason. It's who you are when life is falling apart." She had been gone for 3 years. Cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to the final day. Too quick. Never enough time. Never enough time with the people we love. She taught him that character mattered most. A man was defined by how he treated others when no one was watching. That kindness wasn't weakness. It was the only strength worth honoring. Jason's jaw tightened. His life had been shattered enough already. But maybe, right now was exactly when he needed to hold on to what his mother had taught him. His car came to a complete stop behind the red sedan. The rain slammed down like a wall of water the moment Jason stepped out of his car. His clothes, already soaked, were drowned again in the heavy downpour within seconds. He raised a hand as he approached, making sure she could see him clearly, each step slow and cautious. The woman turned around. Even through the blurred curtain of rain, Jason saw her body stiffen. Fear. She was afraid of him. Of course she was. A lone woman on a deserted road in the middle of the night, with a strange man walking toward her. Anyone would react that way. "Ma'am," Jason called, keeping a safe distance, making sure both of his hands were visible. "Are you all right? Car trouble?" She hesitated, studying him carefully. Rain ran down her face, her hair and clothes drenched. Then, as if making a final decision, she nodded. It stalled. "It won't start again." Her voice was strangely calm for the situation, controlled, steady, the kind of voice used to being respected, listened to. "Would you mind if I take a look?" Jason asked. "I'm no professional, but I've kept enough old cars alive for a few extra years. Might be able to help." Another moment of hesitation, then she answered, "All right, I'd appreciate it." She opened the hood, and Jason stepped forward. Rain pounded against the back of his neck as he leaned over the engine. For a brief moment, he was grateful for the distraction. This was a problem he could handle. This didn't involve lawyers or courtrooms or the fear in his daughter's eyes. His fingers traced the wires and connections. Within minutes, he found the issue. "Your positive terminal's loose," he called over the roaring rain. "Probably got shaken by a pothole. Do you have a toolkit?" "No, I don't think so." Jason turned and ran back to his car, rain streaming down his face like a waterfall. He grabbed his toolkit from the trunk. As he tightened the connection and scraped away the corrosion with the edge of an old rag, he spoke without thinking, the same way he talked when Susan couldn't sleep. "This battery's close to dying," he said, his numb fingers still working steadily. "You should replace it soon. There's a gas station about 2 miles up. They sell them there." He could feel her eyes on him as he worked. Despite the dark, Jason could make out details about her. Intelligent eyes, a quiet, composed authority, the kind of person who made big decisions every day. A soft click sounded as the connection snapped into place. Jason stood up, wiping rain from his eyes. "Try it now." She slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Relief washed over her face, genuine and unmistakable, softening every line of her expression. "How much do I owe you?" She had already reached for her wallet. Jason shook his head, stepping back toward his car. "Just glad I could help, ma'am." "Wait," she called. "At least tell me your name so I can thank the right person." Jason turned back. Rain poured down his face. In that brief moment, their eyes met fully. He saw gratitude in hers, and something else, a quiet respect, as if she saw in him something the rest of the world had overlooked. "Jason," he said. Then, too tired to bother with restraint, too worn down by a trial only 3 weeks away, for caution to mean anything anymore. "Jason Miller." "Thank you." "Jason Miller," she said, her voice warm even as she shivered from the cold rain. "You may have saved my whole night." If only she knew, Jason thought as he climbed into his car. If only she knew she'd just been helped by a man the world believed was a thief. He drove off, watching her hazard lights shrink and disappear in his rearview mirror. He didn't ask her name, and he believed that, in the next 3 weeks, none of this would matter. But he was wrong. Very wrong. 3 weeks later, Jason sat inside the Suffolk County Superior Court, wearing a cheap suit borrowed from Michael Bennett, because he couldn't afford a decent one for the most important day of his life. His palms were damp, his heart pounding so violently, he thought he might faint right there in his seat. This was it. The moment that would decide his future. The moment that would answer the question, would he be tucking Susan into bed like every night? Or would he spend the next 5 years watching her grow up through the glass barrier of a prison visitation room? Michael Bennett sat beside him, arranging his papers with the practiced precision of someone who had done this for far too long. But Jason still caught a flicker of worry in the man's eyes. They both knew how things looked. They both understood what usually happened to men like Jason when they went up against men like Rick Caldwell. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Allison Green," the bailiff announced. Jason stood on trembling legs. He stared at the floor. He didn't have the courage to look up. He didn't want to see the face of the person who held his entire future in her hands. But then something made him glance upward. Maybe instinct. Maybe some invisible thread of fate pulling him. The judge entered, her black robe billowing with each step. Her posture was poised, authoritative, the kind of person whose every movement carried the weight of power. She took her seat behind the bench, and Jason's breath caught in his throat. Wait. He knew that face, those eyes, that composed, quietly commanding presence she carried like a second skin. Jason's mind snapped back to the night of the storm. The woman by the red car. The grateful look in her eyes when he tightened her battery terminal. The small nod. The steady, calm voice. No. No way. But the more he looked, the more certain he became. And the more certain he became, the more impossible it felt. The woman he had helped just 3 weeks earlier was now sitting behind the bench, holding the gavel that could determine his fate. His heart hammered so hard it felt as if it might tear through his ribs. Was he imagining this? The courtroom lighting was nothing like the rainy night. Cold fluorescent lights instead of darkness and downpour. She wore a severe judicial robe instead of soaking wet clothes. Her hair was neatly pinned up instead of falling loose around her face. Maybe he was mistaken. Maybe his stressed mind was stitching together hope from scattered memories. But those eyes, that bone structure, the way she sat straight-backed, speaking little yet commanding the entire room into silence. Jason clutched the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to speak, to ask, to confirm. But how? What would he even say? "Your Honor, did I fix your car 3 weeks ago?" Just thinking it sounded ridiculous and entirely inappropriate. He glanced toward Michael Bennett, but the attorney was still focused on the